Thank you. It's fine. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Ananda Sangha Sunday service here in Sacramento. It's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting us. My name is Nayaswami Sadhana Devi. This is Tyagi Prem Shanti. We are neighbors at Ananda Village, as it turns out. And so it's very nice, again, to be here with you today. The story of Judas is dramatic and tragic for us to ponder. And I thought I'd try to insert a little ray of hope in here. It's quite as I say, tragic and can be quite distressing to listen to this story of Judas. One thing, however, that's, as I say, a little ray of hope. Yogananda told Swami Kriyananda, that he had, that Judas had finally reached liberation after all those incarnations, 2,000 years worth of reincarnating over and over and over again to expiate all of that bad karma that he incurred by betraying Jesus. And apparently he was a monk in a monastery in India, and I believe that Yogananda actually met him, but at least he knew about him. And so he finally, he knew that he had finally reached this liberation at last after all of that. And so that's kind of comforting to hear about. It doesn't go on forever, no matter how much bad karma you incur. It doesn't go on forever. We have the opportunity to work that karma out. Although Master did say that Judas, whose name I forgot was in the monastery, he still had a little bit of attachment to money. So I suppose that even that in itself, that little bit of attachment, was not enough to make him have to come back once again. So we can remember that as a little bit of hope, that no matter how terrible we have been, no matter what awful karma we've incurred, there's still a way. We have the opportunity to work out that karma throughout our many lifetimes that we are given. Well, I thought I would talk a little bit, however, today about something, I think about, well, what does this have, what does this address our lives today as devotees, as disciples? How do we take that particular story and use that as, what does that say to us? I read somewhere else, not in our own reading here today, but I've read in the past that Judas actually firmly believed that he was doing the right thing. He, sort of was a good soul somewhere in there with a large mistake, making a big, big mistake. And so he believed that he was doing the right thing. And so he did what he did. And we think, well, why did he think he was doing the right thing? He was thinking that he was the doer rather than God is the doer. We're taught in our teachings that to try to give ourselves to God to be used as an instrument for the divine plan, rather than what we decide that we are right. And, we don't really even think about whether we want to try to draw God's guidance through us. And so this is probably what happened to Judas. He was looking at a situation and he thought he knew the right answers and that Jesus didn't. And so he acted on what he thought was the best thing to do as a person that he thought of as somebody who knew what to do in that particular situation. Obviously, he didn't know, because he didn't tune in to higher guidance, what the divine plan is. And so this is an important thing for us, because it's a very common thing that happens to lots of us. We forget to bring God into the equation, to invite God into everything we're doing, no matter how trivial it could be or how wrong, or, a thing that we keep falling into, an old habit that we fall into all the time. We forget to invite God into everything that we do. We want to remember to bring God into everything. I hear people over and over again say things like, I'm not a very good meditator. I should be meditating more. I know I should be meditating more. Well, I should be meditating longer anyway. I'm not very good at, I don't remember to do things like that. I should take up, need to start doing Mahamudra more. And on, all the things that they're not doing. And they forget to say anything about what they are doing. But I find that many times when people are doing this, what are we doing? We're making a barrier between ourselves and God. We're saying, I'm not worthy. Well, we've been fed perhaps some of this sort of thing in our childhood, perhaps from the fire and brimstone side of things. And we tend to think that, we have to work really, really hard for God to pay any attention to us. But that we don't really have the strength to do that. And so we start to say these things like, I'm not very good at this, I'm not worthy. But what are we doing? We are just making a barrier between ourselves and God. Remember, we are a part of God. God can't avoid us. God can't get rid of us. We are part. We were made by God. We are part of God. And no matter what we're doing, we're sitting there with that quart of ice cream, and we know we're going to eat that whole quart of ice cream. And we sit there and we shut God out. We go, oh, no, I don't. Well, actually, I don't really want to, but, here it is, and I'm eating this quart of ice cream. And so we need to remember that He's not going to get rid of us. We are here. We are God's responsibility. And somehow, the sooner we recognize that and invite God to be with us in every little thing that we do, no matter how bad we think it is or how unworthy it makes us, if we keep that up, we will go somewhere. We will, in fact, begin to make spiritual progress, making spiritual progress. I hear this, like I said, I hear this all the time. All right, one reason that people, or justification maybe, that people have for this kind of talk is some years ago, Swamiji began to recommend to us that as devotees that we try to set a goal for ourselves of Jivan Mukta, being freed while living. That's a wonderful goal. It's kind of, the bar is kind of high there, but okay, well, let's give it a try. And then, unfortunately, sometimes what seems to happen is people see how high the bar is and they get really discouraged and kind of give up. So I'll tell you an observation that I have made. Swami Kriyananda lived in the 20th century mostly. He was born in America in the 20s, and he grew up and he became a disciple of Yogananda, and he spent the rest of his life serving his guru to the best of his ability. He ended up at the end of his life, he had encouraged and introduced thousands of people to the spiritual path, whether it's this one or another one. Many, many people owe a great amount of happiness to the fact that he taught them how to be happy, how to be a disciple, how to be a devotee, how to be a person who loves God. And by the end of his life, and even now, after his passing, he still continues to encourage, to love, to help people. People are still looking to him for inspiration. Is that such a terrible life? Now, if we look back and we realize that, okay, the lifetime before the one where we know him, that before, whenever that was, who knows, centuries ago, he probably did also do what we're doing. He set himself that goal of final liberation in that lifetime, and he didn't make it. He told us again and again, I'm not a master, I'm not an avatar, I'm not fully liberated. Don't put my picture on the altar. And that was a big deal for us for many years. We finally were agreed to, we could have it on the side. I don't notice where you have it here, and so he didn't reach final liberation in that lifetime way back then. And is that such a terrible thing? Look at all he did. He was a person who was doing his best. He got as far as he could go. Then he died somewhere. And he came back again in the 1920s, and he lived his life. And he encouraged and inspired, instructed, gave much moral support to really thousands of people. And who knows in years to come how many people he's going to have touched. This is not such a terrible thing. Okay, so we try for Jivan Mukta. We do our best, and we fall down here, we get up, and we get back, and we do it again, and over again, and we get to the end of our lives, and maybe we will reach it, and maybe we won't. But will that be such a terrible thing? We've done something good for ourselves and for others. And especially if we keep bringing God into our hearts and we keep asking God for the guidance that we need to have so that we can make the right choices, reach the right people, say the right thing at the right time. This is the kind of thing where you always hope that when you're standing up here in front of a bunch of people that the right words will come, and if not, well, okay, that's what was supposed to happen. So working as much as we can, we do what we know, what we learn, we do everything the best we can, and of course we hope that we're going to reach final liberation, but it certainly isn't worth giving up when we think, well, maybe I'm not going to make it. Maybe I've got a long way to go. It's not worth giving up at all. It's worth continuing to try and not saying to yourself, well, I'm not worthy. That's not the best thing to do at all. What we want to do is to bring God into our lives and have a relationship, make friends with God. Just last weekend, I was with another person and I did a workshop at Ananda Village for those of us that are in our golden years. We keep getting asked this when people visit us. What are you going to do in your retirement? Or what are you going to do in your golden years? Or your elder years, or whatever they want to say. And we are working on that. So we've got a lot of things going. But this was one of them, a workshop on your sadhana and service in your later years. That was the title that was given. And so one of us talked about sadhana, one of us talked about service. But I was asked a question by somebody, actually a good friend of mine asked me this question, because she knew that I had had some health challenges a while ago, which is, by the way, the reason I'm in America and Jaya's not here today, because I can't live in India full time anymore, and he has to spend a lot more than just a few months at a time there, so that's where he is now. And so I had these health challenges, and she said, I can't sit up straight any longer to practice Kriya. And did you have that situation? And if so, is there anything you could do about it? And so, well, yes, I did have it temporarily. And so I mentioned that to her. And I said, okay, during that time when I couldn't sit up straight to practice, I spent a whole lot of time talking to the gurus in my meditations. And in fact, I'm still doing that. In fact, I'm doing more of that than I was before. And she said, is there any difference? I realized, oh, I have a lot more joy than I did before. One reason being, I think, is that I kind of gave up on all of that talk about I'm not worthy. I realized, look, you get something happens in your life, you have to deal with it. And it may not be anywhere near what you thought you should be doing, but you don't have any choice. Might as well just relax and talk to the masters. Ask them for guidance. Tell them about your day, which reminds me of a Facebook post that one of the women at Ananda, her name's Kalamali, she and her husband Yogesh had a baby. And so she, of course, had to post lots of pictures of the baby. And so after a little while, a month or so went by, I don't know, she posted a little video of Dad and the baby, that he's holding baby, and her name's Arti, I believe. So he's holding Arti, and she's kind of babbling at him. And the caption below says, Arti shares her day with Daddy. So, somehow that reminded me, share my day with the gurus, just like little Arti shares with Daddy. And it was a sweet and nice and uplifting experience rather than dear, I should be trying to do this, but I can't do it. And this is the kind of thing that will help us go a lot faster. Getting stuck in the I'm not worthy kind of stuff, that's what happens, you're stuck. It's much better to spend the time talking with the masters about anything. It doesn't matter if it's trivial. It doesn't matter if you're enjoying that quart of ice cream together. None of that is important. What's important is that you have this relationship with the gurus, with God in some other form, if you like that better. I remember somebody when I was in India was saying, I just have a really hard time with thinking of Divine Mother. I can't come up with a picture of Divine Mother that makes any sense to me. What got some ideas? So I said, okay, how about Divine Mother in nature? Somehow that seemed to me that he might like that. We think of Mother Nature, as a matter of fact. And it reminded me, I started to think about outside my door where I live, there's a grove of trees. And I go out there and I see it, and it moves. It's alive. It's like a person in a way. The wind, blows the trees, blows the leaves and so forth, and there's butterflies flitting around, and it's really beautiful. It's very uplifting. You go outside and sit there. It's very peaceful. I thought, okay, aren't these the qualities that sometimes we attribute to mothers? Okay, how about that? So I told him that, and he went off with that one for a while, and I don't know, I haven't heard from him later, so I don't know how that's working for him, but at least it's a way of bringing these concepts into making them immediate for all of us, to help us to be able to relate to them in a way that means something to us, rather than something that's distant, or it's a statue of some ancient, something really like that. Instead of that, it's more immediate. It's more like us. Swamiji said toward the end of his life, he said, I've come to realize that techniques are very important, that's true, and that we should practice them. But I have come to understand that actually self-offering is a much more important part, or we could say it's the essence of the spiritual path. Much more than just techniques. Why is that? Techniques can easily become mechanical. They don't put us directly, they aren't a devotional necessarily, a devotional practice in themselves. If we practice them with devotion, yes, but it's too easy to sit down and just do your Hansa or Kriya or whatever you're doing without any heart in it. And so what he's saying is, know that we don't give up the techniques, but that we need to remember to do everything with God and not to do them in a mechanical way. In fact, he went on to say, in the very earliest years of Ananda, there was a man there, a student, and he was somebody who only did the techniques. He was not interested in serving. He was not a very friendly person. It was, for him, it was all about me and my techniques and how fast am I going to progress if I do more techniques. He said, Swami said, over time, that man became more and more arrogant and had fewer and fewer interactions with people. He was less and less friendly. He had less and less friends, too. Because he was so focused on me and mine and what am I doing, forgetting, once again, that God is the doer. And so remember this, that self-offering is a very, very important part of the spiritual path. We're taught in our meditation practice to do the techniques toward the beginning of your practice, but spend some time at the end enjoying the after effects in some fashion or another. There's lots of ways to do that. I've been doing, for India, doing online guided meditations, and so this has been very nice because I must admit myself, I never put a lot of thought into that portion. And even Swami had said, I think once or twice, if you try to make it an equal amount to the ones that were your techniques. But at any rate, spend a good amount of your time sitting in the silence and enjoying the after effects. And so I get to do this for this online meditation. And it's been very helpful for me. I hope it's helpful for them too. But there's many, many ways of doing this. And if you're interested, there's lots of visualizations to do that can help you with that. And if you're interested in them, go to Swamiji's book, Awaken to Superconsciousness. It has several of them in there. And they're all very interesting. You can meditate on light, or you can see yourself surrounded in Om and all kinds of interesting things. So I would recommend that for you too. One of the things that happens is we worry about not being able to concentrate. We have, thoughts in the mind that go on and on and on and on. And if you receive the touch of light in your email that Jyotishan Devi put out, I believe it's the last one, it's May 26th, whatever it is. It's titled something like, Is Meditation Difficult? Oh, no. Of course not. So Devi is the one that wrote that particular blog, and she went through several of the pitfalls that people run up against. And so one of them is trying to concentrate when your mind is full of restless thoughts. And she says, random thoughts bother us. Having random firing activity is what the mind does. When I read that, I thought, oh, why didn't I ever hear that before? This is the mind naturally is full of thoughts. And Master used to say, don't make your mind blank. Well, I couldn't imagine ever being able to make my mind blank. It just goes and goes. How could I possibly do that? But anyway, that's what he said. Okay, so we don't want to make our mind blank. What do? The thoughts are going and going and going and going. And I remembered how we often, for someone who is just beginning, just learning about meditation, We often do a visualization for them, help them, and we tell them to think of their mind as a smoothly flowing river. Not the Yuba River, by the way. That's not that kind of river. A quietly flowing river. And as you watch that in your meditation, things like logs and debris are going to float down the river. Fine. You just let them go. Logs are kind of boring, aren't they? I mean, one's so excited about watching a bunch of logs. So you don't watch them. You put your mind back on the river itself. That's the mind. It's the smoothly flowing, peaceful river. And leave the logs and all that stuff to go away on its own. And so this is a very helpful thing to know. Well, I'm going to end with something that was kind of funny and fun, actually, that's happened in the last few weeks. You may be getting in your email, like the Touch of Light, you may also be getting Be the Change. We have our communications group. They're busy with all sorts of promotions and so forth, and they have this, whatever they call it, initiative, something like that, called Be the Change, which apparently it comes from something Gandhi said at one time. Be the change you wish to see. And so they've been working on that. And lately they discovered that this is the 50th anniversary of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club album by the Beatles. And on the album cover are our masters, which is a big surprise. And so we investigate that, find out why, how did they get on there? What are they doing there? And we find that one of the Beatles, George Harrison, was a deep meditator. And he was the one that put them on there. And what he did in his life, as it turns out, was he told many, many people about meditation and passed out the autobiography of a yogi, even though nobody can tell if he was really a disciple. But at any rate, he was certainly a lover of Yogananda and wrote a song about him and all these things. And eventually he died. George Harrison died. And it was believed, I think, that after he died, that the room was filled with light for quite some time, some hours, I believe, after he passed away. Well, it's interesting to look at this man. He was famous, yes. So were all the Beatles. They were all famous, and they were all ordinary guys. I was one of those people that because they made it famous, I got to take meditation. I got to learn meditation. Before that, there was no real place to look for, actually, to find out how to meditate. And so I'm grateful to them, particularly to George Harrison. But these people were just ordinary people. They were so ordinary, they were people that I could relate to. They were just like me. And so I could imagine myself actually learning how to do something like this because they did it. I thought, they did it, I could do it. We could all do it because they did it. And so, particularly George Harrison, but all of them in some way, George was an ordinary person who did something extraordinary. And so this is an inspiration for us. We have all kinds of people around us who inspire us in one way or another. And we're all ordinary people, but we all have the opportunity to do something extraordinary, whether it's passing out copies of the AY or whatever it is. Even though we're all ordinary, we have the opportunity to do something extraordinary.